Hello everybody, Sunday Facebook Live. Today's topic is the cost of being in a toxic relationship. This Facebook Live has come about as a result of conversations with people. A lot of people don't realise just how damaging it is in the long term to be in a toxic relationship, and that there is actually a large cost to you both physically and mentally in being in one of those relationships. So I thought I would actually sort of cover off some of that today so that people can gain a better understanding of exactly the kinds of side effects that you might see. And if you're in a toxic relationship, chances are you're already experiencing some of these, and you may not recognise that they are being caused because of your emotional well-being. So we all know, and there's countless studies out there that prove that a healthy, connected relationship is a huge addition to our life as far as, to our health and to our success even. There's multiple studies that prove that. But there are also many research studies that, including one really longitudinal study that was on over 10,000 people for 12 years. So it's a lengthy, comprehensive study that proves that toxic relationships are actually linked to stress, strokes, heart disease, early death, and multiple other health issues. The chronic stress of an unhealthy relationship causes long-term activation of the brain's CTRA, and that contributes to chronic inflammation, and that's why it causes things like stroke and heart disease and what have you. So I'm just going to go through a list of some of the side effects that I guess I personally have seen with some of my clients, and when I talk to other people who counsel in this area, and obviously read the research studies and what have you, a lot of these things are mentioned in there as well, especially talking physical symptoms. One of the things that we do see is that over a period of time, the person who is affected by this can end up with what we call compassion fatigue, because the relationship is unequal or non-reciprocal, and they're not getting their needs met. They're constantly expected to be understanding and to make excuses for their partner's behaviour and meet their needs. They often end up in a codependent relationship, and with time that can lead to compassion fatigue as well. These people will often feel invalidated because you become slowly conditioned that your needs are less important within that relationship, and that your opinion holds less weight, that the relationship exists to meet the needs of that other person, and that you're wrong in expecting anything from the relationship, or that your needs get met. You begin to self-doubt, and your self-worth will actually take a real hit. So generally we see these people feeling quite invalidated, and we definitely see them becoming lower self-esteem. They suffer from low self-worth. They often become uncertain and emotionally fragile, questioning their own mental health at times, especially when there's been things like gaslighting happening, coercive control and emotional abuse. In the worst case scenario, they actually do end up with mental health issues like depression and anxiety, because the other person takes no responsibility for their behaviour or their actions. And because you are a highly empathic person, you take accountability. You always look to your own behaviour first, and so you'll take accountability for what's not working in the relationship, oftentimes unnecessarily and unfairly. It puts you in the uncomfortable position of always jumping through hoops or playing mental gymnastics to try and constantly make things right with that person. And it's a very unhealthy place. And again, is one of the precursors, I guess, or one of the things that we would see around codependence when that's happening. People in a toxic relationship can often end up quite damaged from being in that relationship. That's because being in a relationship with someone who is coercive and emotionally manipulative, it undermines you in very subtle ways, and it undermines your self-worth. And you actually begin to question your reality, as I said a moment ago, through things like gaslighting and second-guessing that person and wondering if you're the cause, if you're the problem. Pardon me. So you actually can get to a point where, you feel like your grasp on reality is fragile, if you like. And if you're in a toxic relationship for a long time, it can actually change the way you view the world, the way you think. You can become cynical and anxious and wary and suspicious, and even get to the point where you actually don't even recognise and can't accept love from a healthy person. So even if a healthier relationship comes along, you actually can't recognise it and you don't know how to function in one of those relationships. Toxic relationships affect physical health as well as your mental health, as I was saying at the opening of this live. Things like skin breakouts and stomach issues and indigestion and nausea and vomiting. Sometimes people will actually go on and use substances to calm their anxiety and nervousness, or that feeling of hopelessness that they often have in the relationship. And so they can end up with dependency issues on different substances, whether alcohol or marijuana or prescription medication even. And those high cortisol levels that will be floating around in your body because you're always in kind of a fight or flight mode, they can cause you to be sick more often because they'll actually affect your immune system, and you'll pick up whatever sort of bugs or viruses are going around. You may also have poor sleep, and as I said earlier too, shortened lifespan is a very real risk. Toxic relationships consume your energy. All your mental, emotional and physical energy goes into maintaining this relationship with this person, making sure that they're happy, that their needs are being met. You become hyper-vigilant to it. You become hyper-vigilant to monitoring their needs and making sure that, you kind of, you attempt to anticipate, I guess is the best way to put it, what their needs might be and how to please them. The relationship will leave you with little resources to work on other areas of your life, such as your career or your fitness or your emotional growth. The reality is that all-consuming sort of mental spin cycle that happens means that you don't have the energy to work on any other outside projects. The relationship really is, I guess, I'm not going to say your whole life, but certainly it consumes a huge part of it. It's front and centre, in your life. People who are in toxic relationships for quite a long while can also become shut down emotionally because the partner their needs always took precedence in the relationship. They get used to not expressing their own emotions, and they learn, not to voice their needs, and so they shut those things down. And it's possible that, they actually get to a point where they don't know how to share deeply of themselves anymore or to connect with themselves. I've had women in particular describe that they've felt like they've lost themselves, that they don't know who they are anymore. I haven't actually had any men say that to me, but I imagine that it's quite the same for them as well. So it's possible that, when you discovered it wasn't safe to share yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, those types of things, you shut them down and they begin to feel unseen and unheard. we can become quite stagnated in these relationships. As I said before, it's not a safe place for growth. There's often a lot of judgment in there. There's often a lot of control, a lot of coercion, a lot of emotional manipulation, and there's no safety. Basically, it's not a safe place for the people in the relationship. And so what happens as a result of that? No personal growth or growth of the relationship can actually take place. And so the people in toxic relationships stagnate. And one of the things that we often see and that are talked about quite a lot by people who've come out of these long-term toxic relationships in particular, they talk about how much growth they've done when they come out of it. It's like when they're finally set free, they actually blossom, for want of a better word. They actually go on a real self-discovery journey and do lots and lots of personal growth. And they'll say, look, I was like this for the 20 years I was in the relationship, and then I did more growing in the 5 years, or even 2 to 3 years after the relationship ended, than they'd done sort of, in the 20 that they were together. And that's why, when there's no safety, we can't grow. It's that simple. We can't learn either in an unsafe environment. One of the biggest concerns about being in a toxic relationship is that it creates a template for future relationships. They can become quite familiar with that dynamic, and the I guess the drama, the intensity, the fact that there's always some kind of drama happening in the relationship, and they get quite addicted to it. And it feels normal. They normalise it over time, and what then happens is that they don't know how to create a healthy relationship. They actually go on and create more toxic relationships. So they may not even be the toxic person in that relationship, but then they go on to the next relationship and they become the toxic person in that relationship because they've laid down this pattern, if you like, for this unhealthy relationship. And it sets the precedence for future relationships. They don't know how to have a relationship in a healthy way, and they've become so familiar with toxic relationships they don't recognise when a healthy relationship does come along, and they don't know what to do or how to behave, and they often have sort of a level of emotional immaturity due to the stagnation and the lack of growth, and they just don't know how to have a healthy relationship. So that's some of the side effects of being in a toxic relationship, and anyone who's ever been in a toxic relationship will share those kinds of things with you. It can be very, very debilitating. That's the end result. I've seen many people come to me who end up with mental health issues of their own. Depression and anxiety are almost standard after when you've been in or are in a toxic relationship. Very, very few people can live in that environment. The human psyche is not made to live under those kinds of constant stress situations, and that cortisol flooding our body creates all sorts of types of illnesses, and the body does its best to try and intervene in order to manage that stress or help us see that we need to get out of it. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and again, if you want to share these videos, pop over to YouTube. The article is on LinkedIn if you prefer to read it. The podcast is usually up by about Tuesday if you'd rather listen to it in the car. And please, if you've got any future ideas for Facebook Lives, do pop me a message, because I'm always looking for new content. Love to know what you guys are interested in hearing about. Otherwise, I'll see you at 5 p.m. next Sunday. Have a great week. Bye.